The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Thanks for hanging out. It's Hail Varsity Radio. It's a road show Thursday. We're here down at Rosie's downtown state basketball celebration yet again for boys state, day 2. And it's day 1 of day 2 for us here at Rosie's. 10th and P is where we invite you down. Can watch the show. We're streaming. You can come on down live and hang out that way here at 10th and P at Rosie's. Can watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, the Hail Varsity Twitter handle as well, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter handles at HVarsity Radio, and of course Facebook and Twitter with KFOR Sports. Chris Schmidt here on site, Elijah Herbel. We will get you back down here, my friend, sooner rather than later. You've got to do their wings. I have been the wing connoisseur everywhere I've stopped, and I love me some Rosie's wings. Get the original buffalo. Yes, on the blue cheese. We've had this argument before. You're shaking your head at me. We have royalty in the building because the 2 Hall of Famers from Hayes Center are here. Hayes Center, of course, making their way tournament time at the Devaney Center for the D1 as they are playing Friday. The Erickson boys, they are the Malone and Stockton of their generation. So they are here. We invite you down here till 6. Back tomorrow here at Rosie's downtown, 4 to 6 on Friday. So the backdrop is unique. There's an awesome stage here at Rosie's. That's where we set up shop. And it looks like I'm doing some sort of late 70s blacklight music video behind me. How do my eyes look, Elijah? That's the true question, as I am the most vain person you know.
Well, with that lighting, it looks like you need a drug test. That's the main thing. Got purple and blue. It looks like you're straight out of the disco in the 70s right now. So if you wake up tomorrow, you show up to work, and you got a random drug test on your desk, you know why.
Sweetie, can you handle this, please? Man, you need something to make you feel better after last night with Nebraska basketball. Let's start right there. We have Dylan Raiola news to get into. Ari Wasserman with The Athletic. His take on Raiola versus Arch Manning. We'll get there. Brandon Vogel with us via the stream in about 20 minutes in hour 2. We'll check in with Gary Barnett, Colorado coach, and yes, Evan Bland. We get to spend time with Evan Bland today at 5:25. Danny Burke, he is in Chicago. He is the pride of Chicago with VSiN Sports Network. Danny was at the Nebraska game last night on assignment, we'll just say for us, as a lot of disappointed Nebraska fans. But, Elijah, you lose last night to Minnesota. You were favored by 6 at one point. You never really could get control. You jumped out 8-0, a very ugly first 20 minutes of basketball where Minnesota led at half. Nebraska down by as many as 9, as many as 11, quite honestly, and then they were able to close it down to 1, but never quite got over the hump. A crushing loss. We'll hear from Fred Hoiberg in a moment. But I ask you this, and it's time to reflect because your season very well could be done if you're Nebraska basketball. Michigan got bounced today, so they'll likely take an NIT spot. Nebraska right on the fringe right there. There's more calculations than just the net ranking that goes into NIT selection. Nebraska very attractive to be a host site for the NIT had they won last night. But at 16-16, there's better candidates. There's a lot of mid-major upsets that have been happening. So your conference champion, regular season conference champions that don't win the postseason automatic bid, they're going to be relegated to the NIT, and it's a tough hill to climb. How do you remember and reflect on Nebraska basketball this season? And I look at it as we're going to write the obituary of 2022, 2023. And are you going to celebrate this season at 16-16. In context, absolutely, it's okay to celebrate what Fred Hoiberg and this Nebraska basketball program's done. It's okay to celebrate and be like, I'm really impressed with Derek Walker and Sam Griesel and Kisei Tominaga and Lawrence. And there's a whole list of reasons to be impressed and hopeful for the future going into year 5 with Fred Hoiberg. There's also last night, the last impression, the disappointment where you thought and hoped you were over those head-scratching losses that Nebraska basketball's been prone to do. And it's been a case where there's a step forward and a couple of steps back. That was not the case in February for Nebraska basketball, but they had one last night get away from them. And let's be honest, every time Nebraska plays Minnesota, Elijah, you and I have been screaming, and I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, take the points. Take the Gophers. They're just a bad matchup. Iowa, Nebraska's a bad matchup for Iowa. There's just certain things where, for whatever reason, Nebraska plays better against Iowa. For whatever reason, Minnesota's a pain in the backside to deal with because of their height and their length, and Nebraska just did not look like the February Nebraska. And I think a big part of that is not having some of the options. They were down Blaise Keita. That didn't help. I know Derek Walker was a little tired, but Nebraska was uncharacteristic with their mistakes, shooting themselves in the foot. The final few plays down the stretch where he had a chance to take the lead or tie with some ref show type moments and also some offensive fouls, not making or taking the best shot. You have Wilcher's stupid foul, and then of course you have Griesel getting a little bit out of control, sped up, and trying to do too much. So disappointing night for sure last night with Nebraska basketball. But overall, look, they can't be 16-16 next year. I don't know that they've got to be a tournament team next year, but I like the direction of where the program's going, specifically where the program got to against some pretty tough odds. That's how I'm going to remember them. But yes, for sure, if you're a Nebraska basketball fan, demand more for next year. Get a better lineup somehow, some way, on top of retaining what you're happy with this year to help kind of springboard you into 2023, 2024.
And I think last night I'm going to be at risk here of sounding too dramatic only one day after a game, but I feel like last night almost felt like a perfect representation of this season as a whole. The team, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll say it right now. It's a very, very lovable team that is still extremely flawed. That's the best way to put it. Is that team is lovable with the way that they fight, the way that they scratch and claw, and did everything they could just to put themselves in hopes of making the NIT at the end of the year. Very lovable for that reason, but we've known it all year long. Very, very flawed, and I think the people that are getting real tired of Fred Hoiberg are the people that sit back and say, why are we this far into your tenure and why is this team still so flawed? I think they probably enjoyed watching the game as much as the next guy last night. It was a fun game to watch, and as I said, it's a fun team to watch. That wasn't a story coming into the game last night. The problem is you're in year 4 with guys that have been around, going into 5, with guys that have been around for a while, and you still are extremely flawed as a basketball team. I know the ref show was in full force last night, but you can't set a legal screen late in the game to save your soul. Back-to-back possessions, you have illegal screens. I know one of them was a little more ticky-tacky, though both were a little ticky-tacky in my opinion. But then you have C.J. Wilger's closeout on that 3 that was late in the shot clock. It was unneeded. That was a foul. Upon rewatching it live, I was angry. Then I watched the replay and I said, you know what? That's a foul. He didn't give him landing space. He hit him on the arm.
That's a stupid decision.
And it's a perfect encapsulation of this team is, yeah, they're scratching, they're clawing. C.J. Wilcher, he put that hand up there because he wanted to win that game so bad that he's going to get a shot contest. He's going to get his team that possession, make sure there's no chance of him hitting the shot. He made sure there was no chance of him hitting the shot, but in doing that, he fouled the guy. So that's just like the perfect representation of this team as a whole. There's still so many flaws within the roster, a lot of things that need to be cleaned up this offseason. I think Fred has guaranteed himself another season of being Nebraska's head coach, but you can't have these same flaws within your team next year whenever you're in year 5 of running a program. You hope that this team can improve next offseason, but there's just a lot of gaps within this team's mentality, how they play. I mean, it feels like every single Fred Hoiberg-led team is good for at least one scoring drought at some point in the game when the other team is shooting the lights out of the ball, where even Nebraska's 10 to 15 points leads this year, whenever they had them, few and far between, it never quite felt safe because you always knew that scoring drought or that scoring run was coming. So, I can't say I'm surprised after last night. We've said it a whole bunch on this show. You always knew with Nebraska basketball, it's the Nebraska basketball way, that magic will come to an end. It came to an end last night in very disappointing fashion, but that's the story of this season. It's on to the next season, I think, for Fred Hoiberg in Nebraska, because last night's loss was a really, really bad look for your tournament resume. And the NIT, I would have put the chances last night before that loss at like 75 to 80%.
Fair.
And now I look at it as maybe 20% odds of making the NIT. That's a bad loss, and it's going to, be fresh in the memory of everyone who's going and picking the NIT. That's the biggest problem with that loss.
It was going to be a difficult matchup, and Fred kind of knew it going in. Let's hear from Fred post-game here as just how soul-sucking the loss was to Minnesota. Half full, half empty here. How do you view Nebraska basketball? I think I see progress. I'm excited for next season, and I think next season will be better based on what he did this year. He got it figured out, better late than never, and they've been a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if Kisei's coming back. I wouldn't if I got millions to earn in Japan, but Fred got it figured out, and he got a style, he got a system, and he got, more importantly, that, okay, this is what you do in the Big Ten. Again, 3 years in, this is my system, this is what I want to do, this is how I've won. It ain't working. So I fixed it, and then I fixed it again with some horrible injuries. That is impressive. The fact that we were even talking postseason after January is impressive, but I'm not letting him off the hook, or Nebraska basketball off the hook with last night. That can't happen. You'll have a couple of those a season in the Big Ten. It's just the grind that is, but it can't happen with what was at stake last night, and that was a chance to keep playing time and space. Here's Fred Hoiberg last night.
This one hurts. It's it's a tough way to end our tournament. This team has meant the world to me. It's meant the world, I think, to our fan base. And it just really, it crushes me for it to end this way. And, I'm going to focus on the positives with this group since February after the injuries, where I'm not sure anybody thought we'd be able to get things going again and get things turned around. To have the best record in the league in the month of February with this team, with 4 rotation guys out of the lineup, I think says everything you need to know. And the leadership that these 2 guys, specifically to my right, did for this group and for what they did to flip the narrative of this program, I can't say enough about how much that means to all of us in our program and what that can do for our future. And as these guys know, and as I told them in the locker room, I'm going to do anything in my power to help them along the way. They've got incredible futures in front of them, and we owe it to them to do everything we can to put them in a really good position moving forward. And I'd be remiss to not include Emmanuel in that discussion as well for what he did to really help change our culture this year, even though he wasn't on the floor. Keisei, the stretch he has had has just been an absolute joy to be a part of. And, going out and throwing that one up, I thought it was in when it left his hands. And, just, again, this group was special. It's absolutely special. And it's going to go down without question as one of my favorite groups of players that I've ever coached, not just on the floor, but what these guys meant to our team off the floor and the chemistry that they built and how they stayed together through all kinds of adversity. And that's what I'm going to focus on with this. Congrats to Minnesota. They played great. They've been playing very well since they came back from their shutdown. And, unfortunately, we just let them get a little too comfortable early in this game. But as we've done all year, we came back, we were resilient, we kept fighting, we battled adversity. Unfortunately, we just could not quite get over the hump. We got that thing to 1 about 4 times. We just could not quite get over the hump.
Fred Hoiberg there, post-game. We'll have more from the mayor coming up here. We're at Rosie State Basketball 2023 Boys Action Day 2 as Tri-County and Donovan Tremblay in action now. You've got tip-off tomorrow, 10:45 with your friends with Maywood and Hayes Center. That is a game. We have some friends of the show here from Hayes Center. Excited to have them out. You're invited down. 10th and Pete, Rosie's downtown, here till 6. Guess what? The kitchen is open after I am done at 6 o'clock. Coming up at 7:45, at least locally, Will Wilson will have Parkview Christian state basketball tournament coverage there. We'll get into some Husker football thoughts from some of the national minds on Dylan Raiola and who he compares to. We have uttered that name before, but you're careful to make too many comparisons to one Patrick Mahomes. So we'll get into some Big Red football. Spring football starts here the 20th, and excited about that. Some NFL news and notes as well with just what is Levante David's future in Tampa. Gary Barnett will get his take on recruiting high-profile quarterbacks and how to cement that Texas pipeline. Next hour, Evan Bland will hit Big Red Baseball with us, some Husker football, and then Danny Burke from Wiesen, some picks for the conference tournaments that are ongoing. What's he think of Big Red basketball as he saw it up close and personal? Different perspective from Danny, a Chicago kid that's a Bulls fan. We'll wind it down here this segment. Brandon Vogel next. We're here at Rosie's with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rolling through a Thursday edition here. It's Hail Varsity Radio. As you can see the large Rosie sign in the background. Schmitty sitting down, getting back to the mic. Hey, Schmitty, how's it going?
Good. We were just high-fiving the Hayes Center contingent, my friend.
There
Brandon Vogel. That's in his football office.
PR man, Chris Schmidt himself.
No, man. It's just good to see listeners out here at Rosie's 10th and P somewhere, someday, and we'll keep it away from the Wisconsin flag I'm staring at, but we're going to get one of those Kramer portraits, right, that you see from Seinfeld that was done, yes. the Kramer, right? We need a picture of Vogues, like the still shot of Vogues with his books and his football behind him in his football office. Or just a cover of the Hail Varsity magazine with Vogues on it. That'd be really cool, too. But just get a picture and put it here in downtown Rosie's. Vogues, can we arrange that? Can we get an artist, a sketch artist? Are you a sketch black and white guy, or do you want an oil, or do you want a gorgeous photo? Just one of those classic Time Magazine, Hail Varsity cover-esque deals. How do you feel about a cover somewhere here down at Rosie's of you?
I mean, I've been asking every month since Hail Varsity started in 2012. Hey guys, what do you think about me on the cover? And still keep getting shot down. I do know my wife is a painter, kind of a traditional sort of oil painting approach. So I do know somebody. I have encountered some illustrators as well. And of course, we have some great photographers at our available to us at Hail Varsity. So really the world is our oyster as far as that goes. I just need somebody to back me up on, yeah, you should really have Brandon on.
Well, I got a guy, actually. He's a financer, importer, exporter, Art Vandelay. You may have heard of him. I think you can get that art here to Lincoln. Get it up at Rosie's, you know?
He's got it. We're going to get a picture of Vogues at the Hail Varsity Club, and we're going to get a picture of Vogues in Lincoln here at Rosie's. I love it. Eric is like, dude, I'm out. Eric Francis, photographer extraordinaire. I love him. Check his podcast out as well with Hurrdat and the Hail Varsity crew. But, man, Vogues, we're going to start with your take on hoops, and then we'll get to football. But last impression of what the hell, Minnesota, or, wow, Fred got it flipped around and it was way better and it was kind of fun from time to time. Where do you lean as you look back?
Yeah, as tough as it was to see Nebraska lose in that spot, it didn't really change much for me in terms of my, I guess, takeaways from the season. I thought coming in, Minnesota was obviously hot. Hoiberg said that before the game. He said that after the game. You can look at their recent results. Nebraska had already beaten them twice. Beating a team 3 times when you're pretty close to equals. I mean, Nebraska was the 11th seed in this tournament. Minnesota was 14. Is always a tough assignment. So I just thought it was kind of going to be a tricky spot for Nebraska. And the start of that game, I heard Elijah in the first segment talking about that Wilcher foul, really tough, thing to happen at that particular moment. The start to the game, though, Minnesota started out really cold, and Nebraska had a chance to really jump on and take control of that game and wasn't able to do it, wasn't able to make its own shots, even though I thought it had some really good looks. And that was when I started to feel a little bit even more nervous, I guess, if I was a little bit nervous coming in for the Huskers' chances. So, at the end of, I guess, the season, if this is the end or if they end up getting a postseason bid somewhere, overall, Nebraska was a 500 team. And if it played well, it could play with just about anybody in the Big Ten. If it didn't play well, it could lose to the worst team in the Big Ten, which it did last night. And that's an upgrade over all of the Fred Hoiberg seasons previously. And that's before you even factor in that they were down 2 starters for the last month and a half of the season. So loss stings, but for me, there was undeniable progress made this year.
And Brady, whenever you look ahead to next season, what do you think this team needs to add to get itself to the middle of the Big Ten once the season ends next season? Because I think that's what the goal needs to be. You need to be above 500, somewhere probably between 10 and 6 in the Big Ten standings whenever the Big Ten slate opens up. That is, if Fred wants another year beyond next year. What do you think the team still needs to add or do this offseason?
I mean, more than positionally or trait-wise, well, I guess this is a trait, but the leadership piece of it is going to be huge. I mean, Hoiberg mentioning Emmanuel Bamael after the game, and of course we saw how much Griesel and Walker have meant to this team. Those are big pieces to replace, just beyond what their production was on the court. Obviously, Keisei Tominaga, if he were to return, you'd feel great about that coming back. But you're going to need, and this has been kind of a long-term thing for Nebraska, I think, over multiple staffs. You'd love to have a consistent kind of post presence. A lot of Nebraska basketball of late, to me, has felt the effort is there, the commitment is there. You get into these games where maybe you have a scoring drought or maybe you lose a lead and you just need a bucket. And it's been hard to find the guy where you can just say, go to him, he'll get you a basket. Derek Walker could do that at times. Sam Griesel did that at times. Keisei Tominaga did that recently. But, just that guy who kind of stands out of, okay, things are getting a little bit choppy. They're a little bit rough. Here's where we go. And, there's some promise returning on this roster, which I don't know that I totally felt in January, after those 2 major injuries happened. It was kind of like, oh boy, what's the long term of this look like, much less the short term. Feel a little bit better about that, but you're still missing some kind of key pieces. And what they're losing, has been the heart and soul of the team.
Brendan Vogel's with us, HailVarsity.com and magazine managing editor. We will get that still pic of Vogue's up in sports bars all across downtown Lincoln, starting with our friends here at Rosie's downtown, where we're at for state tournament. Vogue, did you ever get the state tournament time? Did you lead your team down in Lincoln in March?
No, I really appreciate you bringing that up with 23.
I'm sorry.
Season, and
you were what?
came up a little bit short. I don't think my high school has been to the state tournament since like 1978 or 79. So it was a drought even when I was in high school, and it has continued. But was there in Lincoln as a spectator plenty, and enjoyed that experience. Probably more so when I was a 6th, 7th, 8th grader playing in the MIT tournament and getting to watch some state hoops, more so than when I thought me and my friends should probably be there, but didn't get it done.
Wow, I pour some salt. I did not mean to do that, but it is what it is. Georgia Tech walk me through this. I've been to the Atlanta airport. I've not kicked it in Atlanta like you have. But is Dylan Raiola know something we don't about the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech as they've now entered the picture?
I mean, if he does, he might know something about Georgia Tech that nobody knows, even new head coach Brent Pry. Georgia Tech entered the coaching market not long after Nebraska did, and there were some early Dion to Georgia Tech rumors, which was intriguing. Put Dion back in Atlanta would have been pretty fun, but Georgia Tech made the decision that they played a lot better under the interim and ended up sticking with it. That said, the kind of Georgia Tech entry into the Raiola sweepstakes took me by total surprise. It's been a while since the Yellow Jackets have kind of been a consistent presence, even in the ACC, much less nationally. So, but recruiting is all about. Well, it should be all about, and mostly is all about, relationship building. So there must be something there. It's not something that I can see while driving by, curbside when I consider Georgia Tech football at the moment.
Well, Brandon, whenever you just look at this recruitment as a whole, from the outside looking in, do you think anyone really knows what's going on inside the mind of Dylan Raiola? It feels like every single week somebody's putting in a new prediction of where he's going to land up or where he's going to end up, or one week it's Nebraska and then it's USC. Now Georgia's back in the picture. Now here's Georgia Tech. It just kind of feels like everyone's throwing something at a wall and seeing what's going to stick.
Yeah, I think that, this isn't a problem, quote unquote, Nebraska has had to deal with a lot, but I think that's probably the case with the number one player in the country most years. They've got all of the options, and Dylan's in an interesting spot with just from the time that he was very young with his father playing in the NFL, the access to things that he has, the pro players, the coaching, all of that stuff certainly is unique. I mean, we see it every once in a while, but it stands out. So I look at this recruitment of him as, this is probably about as thorough as you can do it, because the resources he has at his disposal are pretty immense. So, I mean, maybe that's an argument for how Georgia Tech kind of comes out of the clouds, to use a horse racing term, and suddenly enters this race if they haven't in fact done that.
Always a big Joe Hamilton guy. I mean, I loved him. That's 20 years ago, but he beat Florida State when I was in South Bend and thought it was incredible to help solidify Nebraska being the number one team in the country. There's my Georgia Tech story. I did cry at the Citrus Bowl watching that monstrosity. But at least Johnny Mitchell went off before he went to the NFL in the Citrus Bowl, and Tom Haas crushed it. I was like, where the hell's this Tom Haas guy been my whole life? Oh, he's a senior. Pride of Aurora. Vogues, what's coming up with Hail Varsity? What's on your radar here for the upcoming weekend and beyond?
Yeah, so we've got Jacob Padilla down at State Basketball. I mean, his coverage of high school sports in general, but high school basketball in particular, is as good as it gets, in my opinion. So he's got his updates, his running updates, up on hailvarsity.com right now. Jacob also wrote a great feature on Derek Walker for this March issue, which is going to print next week. I'm busy doing a preview of spring football for that issue. So a lot of getting that issue ready to go off to print next Wednesday. If you're not a subscriber and want that, get in now, hailvarsity.com/subscribe. And beyond that, we'll kind of see what the weather allows us to do. Seems to be the word of the day, or the phrase of the day, I guess.
Vogues, we'll talk Saturday. Thanks for a few minutes today.
All right, thanks a lot, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity Radio Road Show Thursday here at Rosie's downtown. 10th and P, you're invited out. You in town for state tournament basketball. or you're going down to catch up with some friends, make sure you pop on by Rosie's, 10th and P. The corn nuggets to die for. If you're more of a nacho fan, the flour tortilla chips, incredible. And maybe you just want a basket of chicken wings with blue cheese and that wonderful, traditional, hot buffalo sauce. Rosie's has you. Bottles of beer, cold, on tap choices, and if you need a whiskey or a bourbon, or both, do it. You're looking at me funny, Elijah.
Well, no, the one thing that I've noticed the older I get, and this maybe comes from my family growing up, we never got appetizers at the restaurant. Like, no. Like, you're going to get your entree. Why are you getting that? Why are you getting appetizers? That was what I was told growing up. And then I move out and I become my own adult, and I've realized the appetizers are the entire reason you go to the restaurant. And Rosie's has some of the best in town. May I recommend the pretzel bites? Absolutely fantastic.
Those are gold.
You mentioned the corn nuggets. The corn nuggets are great. The nachos, awesome. Like, the appetizers down at Rosie's, they're going to do you right. And they paired best with a beer. So that's the one thing. And you can't do better at home. You can't do better appetizers at home than Rosie's.
The thing, too, that's really cool is how we were the family asking for more bread. Hey, can you bring more bread? Can you bring more bread? As we hammer out the carbs. Dylan Raiola. We're just doing a daily Dylan Raiola segment because we have to. Sorry. And some of you are wait-and-see recruiting fans. And then there's hype. I totally get the hype and the hope with Dylan Raiola. And we need to come up with some sort of jingle and catchy sound for some sort. Maybe we go old school with 90210 with some little Luke Perry drop of a famous Dylan. Or maybe Bob Dylan. Maybe you find your favorite Bob Dylan song and you put some bed music down there too. I don't know. I'm just spitballing.
I think we need to go like
Dylan Raiola.
Like an air defense system type horn.
Like an air raid horn.
And it's the Raiola radar.
Uh-huh.
I think that's what it is right there. So
it's not duck and cover. It's not duck and cover time. I got Dylan Raiola news, and it ain't good for Nebraska. I'm kidding. Let's hear.
But really fast, just simply put, you mentioned the fact that it feels like we've been hitting this every single day for like a month now, and you hit like that we have to. Simply put, if Nebraska were to go and land Dylan Raiola, and I've said this before, I don't think I can think of a bigger recruiting win for any school in the past 10 years than Dylan Raiola to Nebraska, simply because of where Nebraska is at right now. You look at these top players in the country, and where do they end up going? Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, now that Texas A&M's got money, Ohio State. Like, those are the places where these guys are going. The fact that Nebraska could land what is billed to be as the generational talent coming out of high school over the past couple of years in Dylan Raiola, that is the kind of recruiting win that schools hope for. That's the type of recruiting win that can turn your entire program, which is what Nebraska's been looking for the last 10 to 15 years, is that guy and that coach pairing that put together can turn the fortunes of a program around forever. And I think Nebraska fans, myself included in this list, look at Dylan Raiola as being that guy who has got the potential to be a guy who is, just simply put, a program changer and can take you from obscurity to national relevance in the blink of an eye.
Well, it's that level of talent coming to Lincoln on that scale, and it doesn't match where the program's performance has been. That is the real coup in this whole thing if Nebraska is to get him. Nebraska is not one of these things like the other. And, you know, USC has continued to gain steam, and earlier reports in the week about that's where the crystal balls are being projected by some of the national recruiting guys. Nebraska is going to stay in this till the end. I truly, truly believe it. But I just think Dylan's talked a little bit about being patient and not getting over anxious. He jumped the gun, and I'm paraphrasing, in some different interviews he's done with Ohio State a year ago. This is going to sound awful, and it may be something you bring back to hammer me with. I think under Coach Matt Rule, Nebraska will be okay with whatever they end up with at quarterback, short term or long term. I think he'll find a way to go win ball games with or without Dylan Raiola. Now, does that expedite things if you get Dylan Raiola? And the answer is it could be. Now, nothing's set in stone. You don't know if he is the next Peyton Manning or is he the next pick a guy who's going to transfer to 5 schools. I'm not knocking Dylan. I'm saying that's the day and age we live in with high-profile quarterbacks. They leave if you don't get great production from them end of their freshman year or redshirt freshman year. That's just what it is. It's quarterback merry-go-round. Let's hear from Ari Wasserman. He is really talented with the Athletic. He is throwing out a pretty good take, and I didn't think about it this way. One kid's already enrolled, and the world is chasing after Dylan Raiola. But how about Arch Manning v. Dylan Raiola, and who is the comp for Dylan Raiola out there? We've said it. This is a national guy, not echoing it, but touching on who does Dylan remind you of?
I don't know if there is a recruiting coordinator in the country that would take Arch Manning over Dylan Raiola.
Breaking news, Ari Wasserman, Dylan Raiola better than Arch Manning.
Like, I mean, we've got people comparing this kid to a young Patrick Mahomes. His size and athleticism, his ability as a two-sport athlete, the strength of his arm, like all the measurables that make you a 5-star prospect. You know, maybe not coming from college football or professional football royalty, but just in general. You know, I think nuts and bolts, pure talent and athleticism, I don't know that it's particularly close.
That's pretty solid, and he's not wrong with the skills. And you got two different styles of quarterback, don't you, Elijah? You have Arch Manning, he's not a statue. He's not Uncle Peyton, where he's never finished a 40-yard dash. And then there's Patrick Mahomes, who can get out of any trouble there is mobile enough, is a capable runner, but he's a pass first, run second or third guy. You need that in college football today. You need the threat of mobility. And listen, there's a lot of similarities. Body type, arm strength, touch, all that's great. And you have way more hype and eyeballs on a guy in Dylan Raiola than you ever did on a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who ended up going to Texas Tech. And Mahomes was fun in college, but he wasn't great in college. He's 6-6, 5-7 perennially. That's not what the expectations are for Dylan Raiola. You get Dylan Raiola into your program, if it's USC, you're supposed to go compete for a national championship. That's the real question here with Dylan Raiola, not what programs you want to go to, what's around me. I think that needs to be talked about. What are the weapons like that he's walking into? And that's fair. If I'm a quarterback, I want to know that too.
And quickly, we got to carry this conversation over. A lot of similarities between his recruitment and Arch Manning. I want to get into that next segment.
All right. Back here at Rosie's, Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hope you're doing all right and enjoying state tournament week here with the capital city. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It's Hail Varsity Roadshow at Rosie's, 10th and P. Here till 6 today, day 2 of the state tournament 2023, and back tomorrow for a Friday afternoon party. We'll see it on here 4 to 6 if you can't make it down today to Rosie's 10th and P. I want to remind you about taking care of yourself if you've suffered an injury, specifically workers' compensation. Confused about options of your workers' compensation claim? Put the trust in the team at Dyer Law to help ensure that your rights are protected and that you get to that settlement you deserve. Call the Dyer team today, 402-393-7529, or visit Dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your workers' compensation claim. That's Dyer.law, DYER.law for workers' compensation. All right, we are talking Dylan Raiola. We will get the air raid siren and some sort of Dylan alert for next week and beyond. But Nebraska will have the last crack, Elijah, at Dylan Raiola. Nebraska will have to win, not in a wow fashion this fall, but show some potential for his services. Weapons are important. USC has that cornered if we're just talking here and now. You also have Georgia. They have 2 shiny trophies that they've been able to accumulate. Georgia Tech has the city of Atlanta. They have, in the running at least, that's been reported.
It's funny whenever you compare Georgia Tech to everybody else. Georgia Tech's got Atlanta.
The city of Atlanta. It's got hot Atlanta, I guess.
That's the crown jewel of America right there, Atlanta.
Yes. Get me in and get me out. Do it now.
It sounded so backhanded. Love that.
No, it was. It was, dude. I mean, I guess I can't smile about. Last time I was in Atlanta, it was one of those, oh, you're going to Big Ten Media Days. Let us fly you to Atlanta and then go from Atlanta to Indy. That was awesome.
Yeah,
that was wonderful.
I'm sure it was.
And then the Sky Club, we got to hang out in Atlanta before Ireland was great. We did not get accosted like Mitch Sherman did earlier in the week.
I had a buddy that he's down in Athens now going to the University of Georgia Law, and he got accosted in a Walmart bathroom in Atlanta, Georgia. So there's another Atlanta story for you. Just
stalls taken. Leave me alone. Okay.
Anyway, can I quickly
all the stops? This thing's got to be Mardi Gras, Christmas, office work party, 40th birthday party, 21st birthday party, all rolled into one.
Yeah, well,
on the recruiting front. What did Texas do?
Yeah, Texas, for 9 recruits, including Arch Manning back last June, spent nearly $300,000 for the entire weekend. And then if you combine the next weekend in where they brought in 14 more recruits, the total spending was $650,000 across 2 weekends. That included cruises, a $30,000 tab that got ran up at a steakhouse. You also had open bar all weekend for the parents. They called it the Texas Total Package.
The parents. Open bar for the parents, huh?
They took them to Top Golf. They essentially just pulled out all the stops. 5-star hotel, 40-plus hotel rooms for 9 visitors. They pulled out all the stops, upwards of $300,000 again, and they ended up going 5 of 9 that weekend with some of the top players in the country.
Did they get to play the bongo drums with McConaughey?
They did not, but Arch Manning's still committed.
That's impressive. Gary Barnett coming up here at Rosie's, 10th and P. Come see us with Hail Varsity.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio. We are down at Rosie's, 10th and P, Roadshow Thursday, back here tomorrow on Friday. And next time Colorado comes to Lincoln, we got to get Coach Barnett down on site with this. Coach joins us here. Coach, you ever venture out and about in Lincoln when you've made your way to the good life, or do you just kind of keep your head down back in the day when wearing buff colors?
You just never have time to do that sort of stuff. Years ago, when I was a high school coach and I'd come to Lincoln, I went to Lincoln a couple times. I was trying to change our offense, and Big Bad Tony Davis was the fullback, and we had a fullback like that. And so anyway, I that's the only time I've ever ventured out in Lincoln I can think of. And that was maybe one night, or that was about it. So I don't know much about it, but it's a good place.
You know the golf courses in the region somewhat well, don't you?
Well, I know most of the region. I know Firethorn, and I know the ones I know are mostly out in the Sandhills. But when we would come to Lincoln, when I would come to Lincoln recruiting, I just pretty much stayed right around the Marriott there, courtyard, or wherever I was staying.
Mm-hmm. Well, Tony Davis, good dude. Enjoy talking with him quite a bit. I keep in touch with him. So was this, when you're doing the offense, what year was this? You were kind of scouting Nebraska, and what did you glean from Tony Davis, Coach Osborne, and those offenses of the mid-'70s?
Well, we had a big, tall quarterback that could run a little bit, could really throw, and we wanted to run that slot I formation, and then we wanted to get into a one-back from there. And so Nebraska was doing that more and better than anybody else, and it just sort of fit our personnel. So it was 74. I think I went out there in 73 and 74 and 75, or maybe it was just 2 years. But we wanted the one back, and with a guy like Tony Davis, he could, nobody was doing much one back, and he was the kind of back who could play fullback or play tailback in a one back offense. So we were sort of trying to work that into our system, and then some of the routes they had off of. Most people can't remember Nebraska being in a one-back offense, but they would take that tailback and put him in the slot or put him out as a receiver, and all of a sudden they had four wide outs or four guys that could get down the field. So it was effective for us. Well,
and that's, remember seeing some footage and some Nebraska football historical stuff where T.O. was this. But he was a passing guru before getting Turner Gill and switching to the kind of the option attack. But yeah, those one back teams were high flying. You had Ferragamo and Hum and Tony Davis and a lot of points and really good. Just nobody could take Oklahoma down back then. Coach, let's talk the state of Texas real quick. And Nebraska continues to make inroads and really have wonderful deep ties to Texas with Coach Rule and his time at Baylor and all the relationship development there. You're a big fan of Texas. You love the city of Houston when it comes to recruiting. And I want to ask you about your experience and how you were able to be so successful in Texas, and not the trick per se, but what stands out to you about Texas talent? Because you guys went after it and did well with it in Colorado as well.
Yeah, we did, and Coach Sanders at CU is going to do the same thing. He's got deep roots in Texas, and so just meeting with him this week a little bit, talking about where he's going to recruit. He's going to spend most of his time in Texas and in the South. So he likes just the kind of player you get out of there. They're hungry. I always felt like in Texas that now this is 15 years ago, Chris. So I always felt like in Dallas area, those kids were so well coached that the kids you got out of Dallas, you got to be a little worried about because they may not get any better. But the kids in Houston were they weren't poorly coached. They just seemed they made the biggest strides when they got to college. And it was, that was just a perception. There's no empirical data to that, but it's just how it seemed. And our coaches, we've always had at Colorado, we've always had a real tie into the state of Texas. We've always had Texas players. And so once you start getting players out of Texas, it's somewhat of a little pipeline. And players are comfortable where there's players at the school from the same state. And so Texas kids, when they would come to be recruited, there was always Texas kids on our team. Same thing at Nebraska, Texas kids on. And it just, they trusted them. They related to them. They just had a relationship with them immediately. And once you start getting that pipeline going, then it really does make it easier to recruit that way. And a lot of those kids can't necessarily make unofficial visits, but if you can get them on an unofficial visit, and in our case, all we had to do was drive over the hill from Denver to Boulder, and those kids were just blown away by the beauty of Boulder, and what you could see was CU right there against the mountains and the Flatirons. So we always had an advantage when they first stepped on campus because they'd already looked at it from coming down off that hill, and they were already wowed. So it gave us a little bit of a foot up.
What's the competition level like to get in and infiltrate and then get that first kid that does well, and then the word starts to spread, the proof is on the field? How difficult is getting that first big get, not just in name but also in performance, but also speak to what you view the Texas competition level like right now with all the in-state schools?
Well, let's start at the end there. I think there's a lot of competition. There always has been, but there's even more now because most of those Texas schools are all doing well. Mm-hmm. And with Texas leaving and Arkansas and Oklahoma leaving, I think that makes it even harder because some of those kids want to go play in the Southeastern Conference, and they only had A&M really at the time. And of course, LSU recruits from Texas. It's like it's its home state. So there's always been all those players down there. The key to Texas is the high school coaches. It's got the strongest high school coaches association in the country. And those coaches they go to coaching school. They're good coaches. They're probably a step ahead of every other state in the union with high school coaches. And their association is way ahead of everybody else. So you've got to infiltrate the Texas High School Coaches Association. If you go to a clinic, the national clinic, the Texas high school coaches put on a little clinic and a little party. Every college coach in the country attends that session. So that's the key in Texas is the Texas high school coaches.
What's it say about Nebraska if Matt Rule's speaking at that thing multiple times?
Well, they use their draw. They can get anybody they want to come talk to that clinic because they are they're so instrumental in recruiting down there. So every coach is trying to get in and speak at that clinic, and it's Matt's got an inside track on that sort of stuff. But in the end, you still got to be winning, and you still got to. It's a long way from home. They're never going to see, Nebraska isn't going to play down in Texas. That becomes a problem that everybody else will use against them.
Right. And what's your remedy? Do you just start scheduling Tech or TCU? Do you get a home-and-home set up? Does Colorado do the same to get some FaceTime, assuming you don't end up in a bowl down there?
Well, I think for Nebraska, they got to start scheduling those games down there with those teams, and they're all a big enough draw where home and away it's going to be a good schedule. Colorado's case, my guess is they're just going to join them.
I was getting there. I was getting there. We'll get to the bingo card of conference realignment in a moment. How was Dion this week?
Dion was interesting, he's a busy guy. He's got all sorts of new people. Every face is new in there. There's guys in charge of this, guys in charge of that. I've never seen so many generals in my life. We have GMs, we have presidents, we have every label you've ever seen is in there, and so it was interesting just to see the operation.
Did you have lunch? Did you? What was?
No.
Or was it just a video deal?
No, it wasn't video. I wouldn't do that. Okay. So I didn't video. No, it was just coach to coach.
Okay.
And he worked me into his schedule because his schedule's pretty busy.
Well, I imagine with the turnover that's happened at CU that you probably get a phone call from a lot of coaches there.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
But,
okay.
I'm 17 years removed, so I don't think my number is in most of their speed dials.
Wow. Well, it's cool Dion reached out, and You know what? You won. You won a lot there, so I'd be making the phone call. Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, what happens here? Is it going to be a new Big 12 with you guys going back home?
That's my thinking. Just being around there for a couple of days, it sure seems like to me that they're going to head somewhere, and it's more than likely with Utah into the Big 12. That's what I see, and I wouldn't put off Arizona State jumping in on that too. But I do think Colorado is heading back that way. They had an emergency regent meeting on yesterday to discuss it, but I have seen no results from it, and no one else has heard it. So I don't know whether it's imminent immediately or not. But Coach Sanders has a big draw in Texas, and he wants to recruit down there, and he wants to recruit in the South. And it doesn't help him being in the Pac-12; it helps him being in the Big 12.
I look at him wanting to obviously win and get set up in Boulder. And are we at the point right now where the athletic department and the school are ready to make a move? I mean, the Pac-12 is in such bad shape that it is time to walk out. And let me ask you about Oregon and Washington. Are they part of this Pac-12, the Big 12 thing, or do you think the Big 10 may be knocking on that door?
No, I think they're going the other way. But, that's me. That's no empirical information on that. But that seems a lot more logical. I don't think they'd be part of the Big 12. But I do think that there's a chance that they'll pull 4 schools in. More than likely 2, but maybe 4.
4 from the Pac-12, huh? So Stanford. Yeah. Let's do that math. Stanford, Cal, Washington, and Oregon. Does that sound like the 4?
Oh, I'm talking about the Big 12. So
okay, gotcha. Big 12.
I don't know if the Big 10's Stanford and Cal are going to be based on whether Notre Dame makes a change and goes into the Big 10. I don't think either one of them go if Notre Dame doesn't join the Big 10. If Notre Dame does, then I think you could see both those schools.
Are you hearing any smoke on Notre Dame in the Big 10? I
am not. No.
Okay. Gary Barnett with us. Coach, let's talk quarterback recruiting. We'll get you out on this. It continues to stay hot for Dylan Raiola as he's doing his quarterback camping out in California. Bruce Feldman's out with his top 25 list of coaches for 2023. Matt Rule comes in at 15. Lincoln Riley comes in at 7. And, of course, Saban and Kirby and Dabo, your top 3. Harbaugh up to number 4 on the list. When going after a quarterback, the stature of Raiola, how did you approach that? Did you just look at the kid's film, or if he was a blue chip prospect, you knew that there'd be other suitors? How'd you go about trying to woo a guy that's got so much hype around him? How would you go about going after a Raiola or an Arch Manning or a Trevor Lawrence? I mean, what would your approach and your pitch be?
Well, first of all, I would not mention NIL. I would not mention money. I'd work on relationship and the quarterback coach. That's the most important thing, his relationship with the head coach and his relationship with the quarterback coach. I would just work on that relationship as hard as I could and give the kid and his family a lot of credit for being of good character and that the money isn't an issue in this deal, that it's all about having him experience the best experience he could have and be around the best people and people that are going to help him and make him better, and how important the relationship is there in that process.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Gary Barnett with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. What's your take on some of the attributes with Lincoln Riley? I know there's track record, but have you talked to other coaches? What's a wow factor with Riley with what he's done with quarterbacks? Has he just gotten great quarterbacks, or what's special about his development ability?
I'm not sure, but I do know that he relates to quarterbacks. He got a lot of hype through the years on television, ESPN, which is what all these kids watch, and and they've been inundated with how good he is, and so and his track record shows you that he has been good. So. You do the combination of his track record and the publicity that he's gotten that, he didn't ask for or pay for. It's just the way it happened. And so he's a guru right now. And so that is a natural attraction for kids. Plus you put them in Southern California, and there's a lot of kids that are attracted to that particular environment.
Gary Barnett, you have a family member that's an all-world quarterback. Let's go down that road. Where would you send him?
I'd send him where he went and felt like he was at home, and who the quarterback coach was, how solid the program was. What's the schedule? Is he going to have a good experience? Is he going to, I think most schools are going to get a good education. There are some schools that are life-changing institutions. After working at one of those institutions, I'm thinking about something like that for him or my son.
Gary Barnett, Coach, this was fun. I'm glad that snow's melted for you. I want you to go hit about 7 birdies this weekend, okay?
7 for the year? Is that what you're asking?
No. So I want you to go get 7 this weekend total.
Oh, this weekend. Well, I did get 3 in a row on Saturday in a tournament, so I got to boast a little bit there. So.
That's pretty good. Hey, this was fun. Thanks for the time today.
All right, Chris. Good being with you.
Gotta love Gary Barnett, Hail Varsity Radio, here at Rosie's for state tournament action as it is day 2, 10th and P where we're at. Back here tomorrow, 4 to 6. Hail Varsity Roadshow. We love everyone coming into the capital city for state basketball. Again, big thanks to our friends from Hayes Center listening to us that came in as their boys play tomorrow morning at 10:45. Locally, our good dear friend Will Wilson with the call covering Parkview Christian tonight. Let's get back into some football. Interesting nuggets from Coach Barney on the Big 12 and Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah maybe finding their way to Big 12 country. Evan Bland with us from the Omaha World. Evan, thanks for rearranging. It's been kind of crazy this week with high school basketball coverage, and I know you've been all over Husker Baseball, and we're getting geared up for spring. How's your week been, Evan? Thanks for the time today.
Yeah, no worries. It's been fun. I was in Minneapolis last week for baseball. We got spring football ramping up shortly. I'm even going to be doing some pinch hitting for some of the boys' state games here the next couple of days. So, yeah, it's a fun time of year, man. There's always something going on.
It's a fun time of year for the Husker football team, too. They're in what's called commitment week, and we haven't spent a lot of time on it. It just seems like their end to winter conditioning, some hellish mornings followed by some fun team-building activities in the afternoon. But today, we had the Husker Olympics, and Evan, I want to get your take. If you were involved in an Olympics of sort, what would be your go-to sport?
Oh, boy. Well, I can play a mean game of horse. So, if that's a possibility, maybe we can dive into that. I played some sand volleyball in high school. I saw they were out there working on, the indoor sand courts that they had. So I think I could be okay in that. More of a defensive specialist, I think, but I could probably hang in that too. That'd be fun.
Tell me, what makes your game of horse so special? Is it trick shots? Is it just a set shot that always goes down? What about horse fits your game?
Well, yeah, I mean you gotta be consistent, but I think part of it too is you got to find a weakness in your opponent. So maybe your opponent doesn't practice bank shots very much. Maybe they don't like going over the backboard from behind the hoop. Maybe they can't stand under the hoop and do, a little one-hand reverse layup. So it's not always just about the half-court shots or the free throws or the wing threes. It's about trying to find a way to make your opponent a little bit more uncomfortable So as they're adjusting to whatever the shot is, they're racking up letters along the way. So not to say that I've never lost a game of horse, because goodness knows that's not true, but that's I think part of the gamesmanship if you're going to try to get some letters on that other person.
Evan Bland with us, Omaha World Herald at Evan Bland, OWH. Find him on Twitter. So, Evan, my strength would be Jell-O shots. That would be my Olympic sport.
Lord knows none of us. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I say, Lord knows no three of us.
Grape or lime.
We're not going to be in the dunk contest,
lime.
though. It's as simple as that. None of us are in the dunk contest.
You should be, though, because you're tall, Elijah.
Bro, I can barely touch the net.
That's okay. Jeez. Well, you're an O-lineman. It's okay. So, Evan, I need to get a thought from you with spring football, and I'm interested here with Harburg for a moment. And if he's a guy that you could see maybe as athletic as he is, and had a great video today where he was winning a dunk contest, or at least it got released today, is he a guy that they're going to maybe look at switching spots, that H-back, fullback spot for immediate playing time, or do you think he's – we'll know more here as spring gets going, but is he a guy – you've seen quarterbacks switch to fullback. They put on some weight and – they've got the size already. Let him get up to 240 and go hurt a linebacker. Do you like Harburg in the fullback discussion point?
Well, it's interesting. I asked something very similar to Matt Rule when the World Herald was able to meet with him a couple weeks ago. And, I think his point of view and the coach's point of view in general is you got to get through the spring, see what he has, and everybody has to offer in terms of their positions. But I will say that he's definitely gotten the staff's attention in terms of his athleticism. I mean, like you're talking about his ability to dunk. He's mentioned as one of the faster players on the team. Explosive, was a good track athlete in high school. So, yeah, I mean, you just kind of can look at the situation at quarterback and say, okay, if this is a Jeff Sims, Casey Thompson battle next season, and you feel good about Chubba Purdy and, Richard Torres maybe potentially. Like, you have a lot of bodies in that quarterback room, and not everybody is always amenable to changing positions. I don't know where Heinrich Harburg stands in terms of just being flexible and looking around, but, I think it's worth remembering that he was a guy who had some decent offers in high school. I mean, Boston College offered him, a number of other sort of Power 5, regional teams had reached out and were interested. So it's not like he was sort of an athlete who was thrown in a quarterback. I mean, a lot of programs evaluated him as that. But, yeah, I think it'll be interesting, again, when you look at just the scholarship breakdown and you're trying to find the way to get on the field and get your most athletic playmakers out there. I think Harburg has shown, even just in winter conditioning, that he can be included in that group. So, yeah, whether it's some sort of H-back, maybe, they can find another way to get him on the field as a receiver, or I don't know if he's big enough to be a tight end, but I think you can be creative with a guy like that. And Rule's staff has shown that creativity in the past, especially in the spring. So I think it'll be a really key couple of months here coming up for Harburg to show what he can do at quarterback. And again, if that's not his destiny long term, then where else he might be able to fit to get onto the field.
Well, Evan, you say maybe not quite big enough to be a tight end. Heinrich Harburg, future Husker fullback?
I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean, he was a tough kid in high school. I know that. Played multi-sports and a smart guy. I mean, I've spoken with him a number of times. He's really intelligent, so I wouldn't think that moving positions would be a huge challenge for him either. But he's got all the makeup, right? Like all the intangibles and the character kind of stuff, at least in my interactions with him, that you could want in a guy. And so, yeah, maybe that's something that he would embrace is more of a physical fullback type of role. And, he's an in-state kid. He loves the Huskers, and sometimes the chance to contribute and be a part of the success on the field for a team motivates guys to do some things that maybe they didn't think that they would do in high school as they were going through the process. So I don't know. I think he's one example of many this spring that I'll be really intrigued to see how the staff evaluates these players and how many guys maybe get shuffled around to have a better chance to get on the field.
See, all I know, Schmidt, is that Heinrich Harburg just sounds like a fullback's name. That just sounds perfect.
Oh, he sounds like he's on a search and destroy mission all the time. Evan, real quick, bud, you've had an up-close and personal look at Husker Baseball. Let's carry it forward. I know they whacked Northern Colorado the last couple of days, but you saw them in Minneapolis. Really good weekend, 2-1. What has changed with this baseball team real quick?
Well, I think from the opening weekend, the short answer would be the bullpen. It has gotten better. Mm-hmm. I think you've really found some arms that you can trust. Michael Garza has been one who's really stepped up. Jalen Worthley, a freshman, is somebody else you feel pretty good about. Jackson Brockett had the midweek start and looked good. I mean, there are just a number of guys that I think have sort of entered the circle of trust a little bit. I mean, the story continues to be the offense. And, you know, power's way up in college baseball, and so I think you have to take that into account a little bit. But the fact remains that this is a team right now that's top 20 in home runs per game nationally, and I don't think that's something that anybody necessarily saw coming. It's not from one guy. I think 11 different players right now have at least one home run. So that, to me, is sort of the thing that I'm watching to see over the course of the season. Can that be sustainable? Because if the offense can keep up anything close to this clip and the defense and the pitching do what they always do, then this season could get pretty exciting. And so I don't know that you're going to find out the answer to that this weekend. Illinois State can hit, but they can't really pitch very well. But, you know, moving forward, I think this is a month when you talk about staying in the state of Nebraska that you're going to want to see some high-scoring games and Nebraska to rack up some wins, and you'll feel pretty good heading into Big Ten play.
Evan Bland with us, Omaha World Herald. Great coverage with Husker Baseball, Husker Football, and he'll be on point for the state tournament. Evan, we'll run you down next week. Thanks for switching up and spending some time with us here on a Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
All right, good stuff. We love talking with Evan Bland and Gary Barnett to get hour 2 kicked off. We're here at Rosie's, 10th and P, and we love being down here at Rosie's for state tournament action. Second week we're here at Rosie's, back here tomorrow at 4. So if you're in town for the state tournament or you're headed down for state basketball, come see us here at Rosie's or pop on by. A quick timeout. Danny Burke, VSiN Sports Network. Some gambling thoughts on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity Radio Road Show Thursday here at Rosie's for boys state basketball. And we head up to the other spot for the other tournament, Big Ten tournament in Chicago, his hometown, Pride of Chicago, with VSiN Sports Network. It's Danny Burke at Danny Burke 5. Daddy, it's been, a month since we've talked. How fat are your pockets? Good to spend time with you.
Well, I'll tell you this much. Going from the fan bet perspective, meaning being at the Nebraska game last night, the pockets got a little bit thinner. And being in Vegas and hitting the table certainly thinned out the pockets as well. So we're hoping we can turn things around the remainder of these conference tournaments.
Daddy, take us through your take on Big Red basketball. We've spent a lot of this show reminiscing, and I liken it to kind of, the celebration of life, or are you in the grips of mourning, right? There's two ways to go about this. When you look at the obituary of 2022-2023 for Nebraska basketball, remember the sweet times, because there were many, specifically February, or what the hell was that with Minnesota? Last impression or more of the journey? Last night was not a total shocker. Minnesota's been a tough matchup for Nebraska all season long. Nebraska was down a big, and Nebraska just didn't play February Nebraska basketball, and the result was somewhat predictable. They just couldn't get it done. It's almost like they were just out of gas, and I know they didn't give that type of effort, but man, they just made some plays that they usually weren't making in February, some decisions.
Yeah, being there firsthand, it's kind of hard not to have that game as a lasting impression, but I mean, you're right, Schmidt. You look back and you know that there had been some very fun, enjoyable moments with this team, but if you're looking back on this season and you kind of have that thought process, I'd say that's the whole issue with this Nebraska basketball program to begin with. I mean, is that what you want to settle for? Do you want to settle for going, yeah, you know what, there were some fun times in February, or do you want to go with, no, we're playing into March, and we are playing competitive games into March? So if you want to reminisce and be as fun as it was, happy-go-lucky, so be it. But, again, that is the premise of the issue with Nebrasketball in this day and age. They have not had a successful season in quite some time. They haven't made the tournament since, 2013? Like, it's honestly embarrassing at this point, especially with how long Hoiberg has been here. And this year, yes, you saw incremental improvements, but you can't then just lose to Minnesota in that game, a team that is metrically, statistically, record-wise the worst in the Big Ten, and you shot yourselves in the foot numerous times in that game. There were no defensive adjustments till very, very late in that game, and that falls on Hoiberg, too. They weren't closing out whatsoever. They were collapsing too hard when they were closing into the lane, and then they got exposed and they let that guy Battle hit like 4 threes at the most crucial times. And then you had 2 opportunities to take the lead, and you get 2 offensive foul calls, and then you have the foul on the three-point shot. And look, you could go back and forth and clamor whether or not that was a foul. The issue was, why are you even that close to where it could be called in the first place? The guy's scrambling with 2 seconds left in the shot clock, taking a very tough shot from deep. All you have to do is put your hand up. You shouldn't be leaving your feet in that instance. And again, shouldn't even be close to where it could maybe be called. So there are so many times where they just screw themselves, and then again, with Griesel going down and turning the ball over, trying to do too much. I don't know what's going on with this team, but look, yes, there were fun moments, sure, but at the end of the day, if that's what you're settling for as a Nebraska fan, therein lies the issue, and people need to be held accountable. Let's hope they get some guys to return, but it's just embarrassing losing to Minnesota and being disappointing in this stage year after year after year, isn't it?
It is, Danny, and that's where I was going to go. There seemed to be a big flip among some Husker basketball fans. Some are still firmly behind Fred, but after last night, it kind of felt like one of those ones that you almost saw coming. I mean, we've been talking about it for about a week and a half now of when is this magic going to run out, and I want to know where you are on the Fred Hoiberg experience. You got to watch him with the Bulls for a couple years. Now you get to watch him with Nebraska. Where are you at? You think you're excited for what's to come next year, or you think it's just inevitable that at some point Fred's going to be out?
Well, realistically and inevitably, I'm sure he will be out at some point. But I guess, you give him next year. Next year, you got to make something happen. And if not, then you're out of here. I mean, look, Hoiberg realistically has had, the one good year at Iowa State, and then he didn't do anything with the Bulls. All right, he's not an NBA guy. Sure, we'll cut him some slack. And then he comes to Nebraska, and then it's not just that you're losing, it's the way you're losing and how poorly you're losing and how a lot of it is your own team getting in your own way, missing free throw shots, turning the ball over, not capitalizing on opportunities. Those are things that you can fix within. It's not necessarily talent. And, yes, I realize Nebraska is not going to draw as much basketball talent right now. And, yeah, on paper, sure, they can be outmatched. But how are you seeing all these upsets then happen left and right? And how are you seeing some of these programs be at least able to have a successful year at least once every 5 years? Nebraska hasn't had that. And I get it. Fred hasn't been there for that old capacity, but that's why this year, all right, you saw the progress. But, again, to lose to Minnesota like that in a time where it really, really matters is what stinks. So, yeah, you keep them around for next year, and next year you got to make it happen. I mean, you can't be playing in the first round of the Big Ten Conference Tournament. You at least have to be in the second round with a bye, and hopefully with the contention of getting into March Madness. Because if not, then what the heck are we doing still paying him the amount of a coach who would be getting a team there? It's just name brand recognition with him at this point.
Daddy Burke with us, VSiN Sports Network, and angry Husker fan with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Love the passion, Daddy. As you look at conference tournament time, you have Selection Sunday. Let's go to the gambling side of things. Any conference tournament picks or any intrigue out there for you as we get closer to Selection Sunday?
Yeah, so, speaking of the Big Ten, obviously, a team that I liked and took a little piece on, how about Michigan State? I think this team, like every March with Tom, is always up for a good run. And at 6-1, I thought it was a price worth taking. And now you're getting a pretty favorable draw here if you're Michigan State. based on what we just saw happen. So I think that's still a good team to look at. And look, their odds are certainly going to change now, but then you can kind of look at them from the game-by-game standpoint and see how you can kind of work it from there. But Michigan State's got a pretty nice draw now that you're going to be taking on Ohio State. Rutgers and Purdue, you're going to obviously, well, you're expecting to at least get Purdue, and then I'm assuming it's going to be Michigan State. So at that point, if you're holding one of those tickets, even though you're a couple games out, or a game out from being to the championship, these books will still allow you to cash out and make a profit. So that's kind of what I saw here with Michigan State, thinking that they had a very favorable draw, not assuming they get Ohio State necessarily, but enough to where I could either hedge or get the cash out option from the book. And look, they could still easily give a team like Purdue a run for their money. So we'll see how I play it, assuming they get to that point. But that's a team that I look at in terms of the Big Ten Conference. I didn't really take any other futures for conferences. I'm more just looking at it from a game-by-game basis, guys, and kind of waiting to see what the path for a lot of these teams are going to be come March. Because, look, yeah, you could make some of these bets a couple months out, and you'll get a better price and better value. But I'm of the notion, because of how wide open it truly is this year, how much parity there really is, I'm willing to sacrifice a couple dollars in the futures market to get a better understanding of which teams I like and then have more conviction with it in my bet and then play it.
Danny Burke with us here, VSiN Sports Network at Danny Burke 5. Find him wherever you listen to VSiN Sports Network, the Danny Burke podcast, and find him and follow him on Twitter. Danny, we'll run you down here next time for some NCAA tournament thoughts. Thanks for the time today.
Absolutely, fellas. Looking forward to it.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, big thanks to many folks who've come out to Rosie's today. Back here tomorrow at 4, 10th and P, your headquarters for state tournament grub and cold ones. Hell, bring the team by and they'll get fed well. We have unofficially adopted Maywood Hayes Center for D1. All right, we're just going to throw that out there right now. Tough night for Lincoln last night. Credit to the Metro teams. Wow, West Side. Wow, Gretna. And wow, Bell West. Again, I maintain, we didn't ask Danny Burke this, didn't want to put him on the spot, but Bellevue West would be favored to win the ACC. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm going to say. And we'll have state championship coverage here locally on Saturday night with the Class A final. Will Wilson locally will have the Parkview Christian squad. Tonight at 7:45, the Fighting Garth Glissmans, as he and his kids made a nice run to state basketball so many years ago, and Parkview Christian working on back-to-back championships. Get buckled up. It's been kind of a sloppy weather day. Make sure that seatbelt is buckled. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries. Only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Scott submitted this as we've talked a little bit about Heinrich Harburg and his athleticism on display on Twitter when it comes to dunking, that he is a track fiend. Kearney Catholic was super impressive there. Shout out to Cliff, where it's not sleeting. It's not bad down here downtown, but Cliff's got good weather in Florida. I would venture to guess in the Air Force Base. So pretty awesome. Good night of basketball ahead, and we're going to come on back to Rosie's tomorrow, 4 to 6, 10th and P. I don't know what I'm going to order yet.
Well, you can't go wrong with the appetizer. I did get a text in from my dad.
I know.
On our earlier conversation. He said, that's right. You don't spend money on appetizers and you can drink a water. That was my life growing up. So
you didn't get a soda. You know what's been highway robbery? Has been every time, like we went to dinner this week. Like that's how Junior will spend time with us. Hey, do you want to go to dinner? He's like, sure. So he'll actually put his phone down and make eye contact with us and not just grunt the life of a teenager. But he ordered a virgin margarita. And I got the old bill, and I had A, despite what you think, Elijah. I see the thought bubble forming. I had a beer. Mama had a diet soda. And then Junior's like, yeah, I'll do a virgin daiquiri. And the virgin daiquiri was more than the virgin margarita was more than the regular margarita. I mean, what the hell? We should have just got him the bottom shelf tequila.
See, after spending that weekend in Vegas, nothing in Lincoln's highway robbery anymore. You know what's highway robbery? At the Walgreens on the Strip, it was $25 for 6 Michelobes. That's highway robbery. That's highway robbery. Lincoln is nothing compared to everything else, but I will say,
dare I say you're buying the wrong thing at the pharmacy.
That's possible. I'm just gonna.
There he is, Elijah Herbel. Chris Schmidt back tomorrow. Come see us at Rosie's Roadshow Friday with Hail Varsity 4 to 6, presented by Currency.